Hey, good evening. I'm Emily Ouija, and you're watching The Smoking Section, brought to you by Cambridge Citizens for Smokers' Rights. Tonight, I'm once again in conversation via Skype with Zé Duroche, a writer residing in Germany. Zé regularly reads to audiences and has written many articles about smoking bans and even a book about the rise of prohibition and the nanny state. Welcome, Zé.
Thanks.
Thanks for joining us. How are you?
I'm fine. Could be better, but it could be worse too. So
That's true. That's what I always say. So you've done many actions at this point. You've written a lot about smoking bans in Germany. How did you actually get started with this smoking activism?
Well, it started a few years now, almost 10 years ago, when they started in Bavaria to campaign for an absolute smoking ban in bars and restaurants. And I thought that's a bit too much. And I thought, and the arguments were always that it's bad for health. And I thought, come on, they're mixing up something here. They're mixing active smoking with passive smoking, and passive smoking could be unhealthy somehow, but it's not. They're talking about both things as if they were the same, right?
Right.
I mean, it's like if you eat eggs, you have what do you call it? Sulfur. You have salmonella. You have always some arsenic. So it's and sometimes even cyanide, and stuff like that. So. In the last months, there was something called fipronil. I don't know what it is. Lots of very dangerous things. So, and I thought, well, and you have all these things, and you have to get rid of all this poison, right? And part of this poison is disposed of by gases. And so you're sitting on in a meeting, and you just have a fart, and a very silent one, but so people around you are passive egg eaters, and I think, well, but you can't compare active egg eater with a passive egg eater, right? So I started doing some research to know if I'm really that harmful to other people, I should really stop, but I want to know it, right? So I started studying, learning how to read medical statistics, and I found 20 studies saying, proving that lung cancer is smoking, passive smoking causes lung cancer, and 119 that didn't show it, right?
Wow.
So, I thought, well, that's not really, in a normal case, every medical statistician would say, oh, that's a very, very weak evidence.
And
so
do you think
I
that,
started
campaigning
against it.
Just to interrupt, sorry, do you think that most people in the public would be shocked just to hear that those figures that you just named? And I think that most people now in the public think that every study that exists shows that passive smoking kills.
Yeah, well, the problem is people, it's for them, it's quite hard to believe in it. Usually their reaction is, yeah, come on, I don't believe statistics that I didn't fake myself. Then I ask, well, did you fake any statistics yourself? No. So why do you believe in any statistics? Why do you believe what these people, all these people are saying that it's dangerous if you don't believe those statistics? Everybody knows it. Everybody knows it. Yeah, I mean, the problem is that the media concentrates. the media very rarely really lie. What they very often do is a selection of truths, right? So what happened is that in this case, they just concentrate on studies. When they speak about studies, about smoking and any disease, they will all mostly in 80 or 90%, they will report about negative studies.
Yep. Makes sense.
And there is, I guess, maybe somebody says, why should they? But I guess there are some branches that are interested in having it like this. I mean, it's why.
Well, why? I think the question of why we could get into more later, but I know we've discussed that before. But to go back to how you got involved in the smoking bans first in Munich. Was it in Munich when they were first introduced? Yep. And so you created. Was your first action was a champagne strike? Is that correct?
Yeah.
So. I found this really funny. You sent me some photos and an article about it, and I thought it was just brilliant. So you basically said that you weren't going to drink champagne for a week in protest of the smoking ban. Is that right?
For 11 days.
11 days. Wow.
That was really hard.
What a sacrifice.
What a sacrifice, yeah. Some people said, oh, I wouldn't bear it.
No, I don't think I could do that.
11 days without champagne.
Well, so tell us a little bit more about how you came up with that idea.
Well, first, I was just overwhelmed by this story. I mean, I wanted to protest against it somehow. And I thought, first I thought hunger strike, but hunger strike is a bit... And then, after all, you have to stop it anyway.
Yeah.
And so I thought, or you die, but I didn't want to die, right? So I thought, then I have to do something different, but something that calls the attention of the people, right? And something that is more in
a bit lighthearted. Yeah, a bit funny is good. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that the problem
always better than being a real martyr.
Right, martyr. Yeah, that's a good word for it. I think it's if you do a hunger strike, it's a little too heavy. I think a little too depressing, especially for the subject. If you're gonna get sick and die, people are probably gonna say, "Oh, he was a smoker, so he died."
Yeah. So I had this idea with champagne strike, and then later they were collecting the signatures to make this plebiscite referendum, and then I had a big billboard behind on my back, and with a signature list for the ban of bras, airplanes, cars, alcohol and chairs, because millions of people die because they sit too much and get colon cancer, right?
And why? What was the connection with bras? What was the what is the danger?
Well, it's much more. There is only one study. Nobody is interested in it because there is no surrogates for bras, right? Big pharma doesn't have a surrogate for bra. So they say it wasn't scientific, but it was a big study with 2,000 people, right? And they showed that the risk of getting breast cancer is times higher than smoking, active smoking even.
I think I have heard that. Yeah, actually, yeah.
Well, it's everywhere. Is just danger, danger, danger. But we never had such a high life expectancy. So it's a bit stupid. It's a bit ridiculous. I mean, of course, we just discovered that we're losing years, but it's not really like that, because in countries where they don't smoke, they live less. In countries where they don't drink alcohol, they live less. In countries where they live, where they don't get industry gases, they live less, because they don't have all this civilization. And this civilization is a complete package you get, and there are things in it that get your life expectancy down, but altogether your life expectancy is growing, right?
That's a very good point. I know we also discussed, and we'll get into this a little bit more later, but also the advantages of social interaction. One of the disadvantages for smokers with smoking bans is that they've had much less social interaction, which I think has made people lonelier. And I know we discussed that.
Lonelier, and
that's also a
they
factor.
Earlier.
Yep.
Yeah, but it's no problem because they're smokers. So if they live less because they socialize less, then it's just good for humanity.
Yep.
We get rid of them quicker.
That's true. It's true.
I mean, it's they don't really care about the health of smokers. I mean, if they did, they would think, well, smokers just don't go out anymore. They get lonesome, or as you said, and when they're in the winter, they have to go out and stay in the cold, in the rain, get rheumatism, right? I mean, you can get so many things. I mean, they never made a real study where they look at everything. I mean,
that's a very good point. And what kind of reaction did you have from people when you were wearing the billboard that said, let's ban bras, let's ban cars, let's ban alcohol? What kind of reactions did you get from people on the street?
Usually, most people just saw it and got a joke and came to sign for a joke. And but there were also people that came and they thought, I have to sign again for a total ban, right?
Oh.
So they asked me, where do I have to sign? And first I said, it's there at that line there, but then I thought, why should I help them to get to the right place to sign, to make my life a hell of a life?
Worse.
I mean,
yeah.
So I just said, it's here, sign it
sign
here,
here.
and they signed it, and they thought, okay, I've done my duty for a better world and a better humanity.
That's good. That's pretty good.
Smoke free.
Right.
But when I hear this word free, alcohol free and smoke free, and then I remember of foreigner free, and they remember that 6 years ago in this country here, they talked about Jew free.
Yep.
So it's when you see the word free with another word, take care.
Yeah, I've actually noticed it now with dog free here in the U.S. Like there'll be dog-free parks. I just find it very
then it's not free. It's always the opposite of free.
Right.
It's funny.
Right, it is funny. So that was what, 10 years ago that you were protesting these initial smoking bans.
Yeah.
10 years ago. So what is the current situation in Germany? I know we discussed this with Christoph Lufenisch, who was on the show before, and I know it's quite complex because it's similar to the United States in that there's different states that have different laws. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I live between Stuttgart, and that's another land, as they call it. and or state, and but usually I lived in Bayern, Bavaria, and that's and there it's the only place where I feel okay.
Oh, okay.
In a radius of 100 or 200 kilometers. The only place where I feel okay, except in the summer, because in the summer I can sit outside somewhere.
Yep.
But in most of the time in Germany, it's cold, right? So most of the time, the only place where I feel okay, it's in my apartment. All other places, or maybe if I go to someone who smokes or accepts, it's non-smoker but accepts smokers. But that's you can find this kind of people. You can count them with the fingers of one hand, even if you work in a sawmill.
Yeah.
Where you maybe don't have all.
And you lose your fingers. Yeah. Yep. No, that's true. I mean, it sounds very similar to the United States in that, it really depends on where you live. So, if you happen to live in a state or a land that has more freedom of smoking, you might not appreciate quite how bad it is in other places. Where I live in Boston, all bars have banned smoking. There are still one or two private clubs that allow smoking, but they are quickly disappearing. So it's really very distressing. And you mentioned being able to smoke outside, but here most, pretty much all bars and terraces have also banned smoking outdoors. So it's really,
outdoors. Yeah. It's the same in Brazil. I mean, I hadn't been for quite a while in Brazil. And then I always told my girlfriend, in Brazil it's all people are very tolerant and there are no problems. But then we came to Brazil together after I hadn't been in Brazil for quite a while, and suddenly everything was forbidden.
Wow.
So I was quite impressed or disappointed. I mean, and it's outside too. You can't smoke outside, so it's forbidden to give a smoker any kind of shelter. And
any kind of shelter. Wow. Any kind of shelter. Even a roof.
Against really torrid sun or against rain. It's you can't give any roof. Offer any roof for a smoker, right?
Wow.
And you can't smoke in many states. You can't smoke on the beach. So, some people say it should be forbidden. Of course, it should be forbidden in any kind of bar or restaurant, but not on the beach. And they see themselves as tolerant. That's funny.
So we were talking about smoking in Brazil, and I know that you have traveled widely to many countries. And one thing we haven't really discussed is that you've actually traveled to North Korea. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So
I say because in North Korea you can smoke in a restaurant. And you can drink, and you can even smoke a joint in a restaurant.
Really? Is that true?
Yeah.
Wow.
So, I mean, you just have to have the means to buy it, but it's there's no ban on it. So I say there is in the West people say, "Wow, we're so free." As nowhere else in the world. But the fact is that, political dissidents are much freer in the West than in most countries, probably. But from another point of view, for example, for smokers or for drinkers or for stoners, it's many other countries. We wouldn't call them democracies, but the people are free for that. I mean, so
Why do you think?
Political dissidents is just, I mean, they might be more punished than people who have this kind of addictions. Still, but the difference is that dissidents are maybe a few thousands, and smokers or drinkers or stoners, there are millions. So
do you think that
freedom is not just the freedom of criticize the government, I think.
Do you think
freedom is the freedom to do anything?
That's true, but do you think that that's the
I mean, anything that doesn't do any harm to other people.
But do you think that that's the reason why are these particular political regimes just more realistic about human nature and what human beings want to do, such as drinking, smoking, maybe using drugs, and as you say, there's many more of those people than our actual political dissidents. Do you think that that's the reason? Okay, interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it's they're not so much punished, but they're much more people, many more people, a lot of more people.
That's very interesting, and I wonder if it does have to do with that element of control, in that that they're just more realistic about knowing what they can control with people, whereas in the West, perhaps we have an inverted, it's the opposite almost, that somehow we've come to accept these curtailing of our small liberties, whereas perhaps the larger liberties we would object to. I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's
There's not much to say to that, I suppose. There's not much to say.
But anyway, I think that. My theory is, in this case, it's everything nowadays. People know that it's somehow harmful for your health. Whatever you take, if you see for things that bananas can cause around 20 diseases or problems bananas can cause, and everything, no matter what you take, it's somehow dangerous for you. So the question is, and now with this new philosophy, it's not. In the old times, there was the basis for ethic, for moral, was religion, and the goal was heaven, and the enemy was the people with other religions, right? Muslim, Protestant, Catholic, and whatever. And in the last 200 years, it was the political ideologies were the basis for ethics and moral. And the goal was the political utopia.
Utopia, yep.
Utopia, and the enemy was the capitalist swine or the communist swine or whatever. And now there is a new ideology which is not religious and it's not political. It's the personal happiness. And this personal happiness is based on it's the most palpable thing you can do with it is health, your personal health. So it becomes the basis for ethic and moral, and it's quite funny because then it's for the first time you're not judged by what you do to other people. You're judged by what you do to yourself. There was a German student that was killed in going into a garage in the USA just to show that has the guts to do it, and he was shot. And his father said, "Oh, my son was so good. He didn't smoke. He didn't drink. he didn't take drugs. So what is this kind of funny moral that people say he was so good,
He's
he
a good
didn't
person.
do any harm to himself.
Right.
I mean,
but he did harm to other
ridiculous,
people.
right?
Yeah, exactly. That's that's a very interesting point, and we're gonna stop here for today. But we're gonna come back next week with part 2 of our interview with Ze Duroche. Thank you, Ze.
Right.
Oh, Ze, you have recently started a YouTube channel of your own. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm making videos about other countries and other languages. Sometimes, always again, making some comments about smoking bans and against things, against liberties. But in principle, is about countries and languages, and it's in several languages with several subtitles and upper titles, and
Oh, good.
so it's something for people who want to learn some other language like Spanish or French or German or Portuguese. It might be interesting. Next one will be about Australia, where I say Australia is probably the country the country with the second best quality of life in the world. But unfortunately, not for smokers.
That's great. Wow.
I guess if they come sometime with a death penalty for smokers, that will be the place where it will happen first.
I don't doubt it.
And then it will be about English language and so on.
That's great. So everyone, please be sure to subscribe to Ze on YouTube, and we hope to see you again soon. Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.